It always starts the same way, with silence. David Miller used to believe silence was a luxury, a pause between meetings, a moment before sleep. But the night Emily didn't come home, silence became something else. Her phone went straight to voicemail. No message, no explanation. And standing alone in their modern house overlooking Puget Sound, David asked himself a question that would haunt him forever. How can someone vanish when nothing was wrong? David Miller was a successful architect in Seattle, 42 years old, respected, rational, grounded in logic. Emily Miller was the opposite, a novelist. She believed emotions mattered more than proof, that some things couldn't be measured or explained. They balanced each other. That morning, Emily kissed David goodbye and promised to be home early. She had a reading downtown, a small event, nothing unusual. By midnight, her car was still gone. David drove the wet streets himself, windshield wipers fighting the rain, checking places that no longer made sense. Cafes, parking lots, empty sidewalks reflecting neon light. Seattle felt too large that night, too dark, too quiet. At 3:17 a.m., his phone rang. The police found Emily near the rocky shoreline south of the city, below a narrow cliff. The tide had already started to rise. They said it was an accident, a slip. Wet stones, bad weather. No witnesses, no struggle. David nodded as they spoke, but their words passed through him without leaving a mark. Because accidents don't feel like this. At the remembrance ceremony, rain fell steadily, as if the city itself was mourning. David stood motionless, while strangers offered condolences he couldn't hear. That night, back in the empty house, he couldn't sleep. So he turned on the television. The screen flickered. Black and white noise filled the room. Static. Random patterns. Meaningless interference. David stared at it longer than he should have. And for just a moment, barely a moment, he thought he heard something beneath the hiss. Not a word, a shape of a sound, like someone trying to speak from very far away. He shut the TV off and sat in the dark, his heart racing. Grief does strange things to the mind, he told himself. But as he walked away, he missed one detail. The television turned itself back on, and buried deep inside the white noise, something was learning how to use his name. Because the next day, a stranger would knock on David Miller's door and tell him that Emily was trying to talk to him. The knock came at exactly 7:06 p.m. 3 short taps. Careful, polite. David froze in the kitchen, staring at the clock as if it had accused him of something. Nobody knocked on doors anymore. They texted. They called. The knock came again. When David opened the door, the man standing there already knew his name. Frank Williams looked ordinary in the most unsettling way. Mid-50s, neutral jacket, eyes that never quite stopped moving. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said calmly, "but your wife has been trying to reach you." David laughed. A short, sharp sound, the kind people make when something is deeply wrong. "My wife is gone." Frank nodded. "I know." That was when David tried to close the door. But Frank raised a hand, not to stop him, just to speak one last sentence. "She keeps repeating the same thing. Your name. And the word, listen." Silence filled the space between them. David's fingers loosened on the doorframe. Inside, Frank refused coffee, refused to sit. He spoke like someone afraid of staying too long in one place. "There are voices," he said. "They hide in interference. Radio static, television snow, broken signals." David felt anger rising, grief turning sharp. "You prey on people like me," David said. "People who want to hear something that isn't there." Frank didn't argue. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small recorder. "I never show this unless I'm sure," he said quietly, "because once you hear it, you can't unhear it." The room felt colder when he pressed play. At first, there was only noise. Then, a breath. Uneven. Familiar. And beneath the static, a voice shaped by struggle and distance. "David." The sound cut off abruptly. David dropped the recorder. That voice wasn't similar. It wasn't close. It was Emily. David demanded answers. Frank hesitated, then spoke faster, lower. "She's not the only one," he said, "and not all of them should be heard." He explained how signals behaved like cracks, how grief acted like a doorway, and how sometimes, when those on the other side pushed through, something else pushed back. David didn't hear most of it, because his world had narrowed to one unbearable truth. Emily was still there, somewhere, trying. "I need to hear her again," David said. Frank's face tightened. "That's the problem," he replied. "Once they know you're listening, they don't stop." Thunder rolled outside. The lights flickered. For a split second, the television across the room turned on by itself. White noise filled the space, and this time, the voice came through clearer, desperate, urgent. "Don't trust." The screen went black. 2 hours later, Frank Williams would be found lifeless in his workshop, and David Miller would take his equipment home, bringing the voices with him. Frank Williams was gone the same night David heard Emily's voice. The police called it a heart attack, a lonely man, poor health, an unfortunate coincidence, the smashed radio on the floor, the burn marks near the outlets, and the fact that every screen in Frank's workshop had been turned toward the wall, as if someone didn't want to be seen. David took the equipment before anyone could stop him. He told himself it was evidence, but deep down, he knew the truth. He brought it home because the silence there was unbearable. David turned his loft into a graveyard of electronics. Old televisions stacked like windows into nowhere. Radios tuned between stations. Cables crawling across the floor like veins. Day and night, white noise filled the air. At first, there was nothing. Then patterns, shapes forming and dissolving, sounds that almost became words. David stopped sleeping. He stopped answering calls. He started writing down timestamps and names. Some were whispered, some screamed. None of them were alone. Sarah Johnson found him through Frank's notes. She was younger than David expected, quiet, hollow. Her fiancé was lost 6 months earlier in a construction accident. Official explanation. Clean. Final. "But he started calling to me," she said softly. In the noise, just like Emily. Together, they listened. Together, they noticed something wrong. Whenever a familiar voice appeared, another sound followed. Low, distorted, like something breathing behind the signal. Frank had called them shadows, not ghosts, not human, hungry, and learning. Late one night, the screens synchronized. Static moved with intent. A shape formed, not a face, but the idea of one. Sarah stepped back, trembling. "This isn't him," she whispered. Then Emily's voice cut through, sharper than ever before. "David, listen to me." Her tone wasn't loving. It was terrified. "They're using us," she said. "They show you things so you'll keep watching." The static surged. Other voices rose, overlapping, impatient. And for the first time, David understood the real danger. Those beyond weren't calling for help. They were warning the living, because the next image to appear in the white noise wasn't from the past. It was happening right now. The image returned without warning. No static buildup, no distortion, just a face. A young woman, frozen mid-breath, eyes wide with fear. The lighting was wrong, harsh, industrial, and in the corner of the screen, burned into the noise, was a single word. Liv David felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't a memory. It wasn't the ones on the other side. This was happening now. The woman appeared again and again across different screens, different frequencies, same angle. She was bound, her mouth taped, breathing fast through her nose. David recognized her a minute later from the news. Jessica Brown, 22 years old, university student, missing for 3 days. The police had no leads, but the shadows did. Emily's voice returned in fragments, slipping between waves of interference. David, time is short. Numbers followed, coordinates, broken, repeating. Sarah watched the screens, hands shaking. They're not helping her, she said. They're showing you. As David focused, the signal sharpened. Every time he leaned closer, the image improved. And every time it did, something else changed. The temperature dropped. The air thickened. On one screen, behind Jessica, a dark shape shifted. Not human. Watching. Emily's voice came again, weaker. They're using your attention, she said. They need you awake. David realized the truth too late. The shadows weren't guiding him out of kindness. They were feeding. The coordinates finally aligned. An industrial zone near the Seattle docks. Abandoned warehouses. Power stations. Jessica screamed, her first sound breaking through the signal. The screens exploded into static. Sarah grabbed David's arm. "If you go there," she said, "they'll follow." David didn't answer. Because on the final screen, Emily whispered one last thing. "She's still alive." David grabbed his keys and ran into the rain, unaware that something had already left the screens and followed him into the night. Rain swallowed the city. David drove without thinking, guided by numbers still echoing in his head. The docks appeared out of the darkness like a scar along the waterline. Abandoned warehouses, blacked-out lights, the hum of distant generators. His phone lost signal the moment he stepped out of the car. Behind him, somewhere far away, a screen flickered back to life. The warehouse was unlocked. That terrified David more than a locked door ever could. Inside, the air smelled of oil and cold metal. Every sound echoed too long. "Jessica," he called. No answer. Then he heard breathing, fast, panicked. He followed the sound through narrow corridors until he found her. Jessica Brown was alive, tied to a chair, shaking, eyes red from crying. David rushed to her. That was when the lights came on. The man stepped out from behind a pillar, mid-30s, work boots, utility jacket, an electrician, ordinary, invisible. "You shouldn't have come," he said calmly. He spoke like someone repeating a line he'd practiced. "I didn't choose them," the man continued. "They showed me things, told me where to find people." David felt the air shift. Behind the man, the shadows moved, stretching along the walls, pulsing like a living signal. "They don't talk to you," the man said, smiling faintly. "They talk through you." The shadows surged. Lights exploded. Static screamed, loud, physical, inside David's skull. Emily's voice cut through everything. "David, don't look at them!" But it was too late. The shadows weren't shapes anymore. They were intent. They pressed against him, feeding on fear, on focus, on awareness itself. The man lunged. David fought blindly, cutting Jessica loose as the floor trembled beneath them. The shadows pulled harder, not at his body, at his attention, at the part of him that listened. David shoved Jessica toward the exit. "Run!" he shouted. She didn't hesitate. The man screamed as the shadows turned on him, tearing his screams into static. The floor gave way near the loading platform. David slipped. For a moment, he hung there, rain pouring through the broken roof. Emily's voice was close now, soft, grateful. "You did it," she said. David let go. As David fell into darkness, the static went silent, and somewhere far away, a child turned on a radio. The official report stated that David Miller was lost instantly. A fall, structural failure, an unfortunate outcome during a civilian rescue attempt. Clean words, comfortable words. But no report ever mentions what happens after the moment everything stops. What happens when the noise fades and something else takes its place. Because silence is never empty. Seattle moved on quickly. It always does. Rain erased footprints near the docks. The warehouse was sealed, then demolished. News cycles replaced one headline with another. Jessica Brown survived. She refused interviews, refused therapy, refused to explain why she sometimes woke up screaming about shadows that didn't belong to the dark. Sarah Johnson left the city a week later. She didn't say goodbye. She knew better now. Some doors don't close. They only stop being visible. David's house overlooking Puget Sound felt wrong without him. Not empty. Listening. His wife packed away his clothes slowly, as if sound itself might break if she rushed. She stopped using electronics unless necessary. She slept in silence so deep it hurt. But silence has weight. And children feel it first. Noah Miller missed his father's voice more than anything. Not what David said, but how he said it. Calm, present, certain. At night, Noah lay awake wondering something no one had asked him. Where does a voice go when the person is gone? Adults said it lived in memories, but memories don't answer back. The radio was old and scratched. Noah didn't know why it felt warm. When he turned the dial, white noise filled the room, steady and even, like breathing. At first, Noah just listened. Then he spoke. "Dad?" He didn't expect an answer. That's what made it worse when he got one. "I hear you." The voice was calm, gentle, but careful, as if choosing every word mattered. Noah leaned closer. "I miss you," he whispered. Static trembled. "I know," the voice replied. There was a pause. Then something else shifted. Low, distant, almost curious. David's voice returned, firmer now. "You can't stay here," it said. "You have to let go." Noah frowned. "But you're still here," he said. The static grew louder. "I am," the voice admitted, "but I shouldn't be." For a moment, Noah thought he heard other sounds behind his father's voice. Not words, intention, watching, waiting to be noticed. David spoke again, quieter. "They listen when you listen," he said, "and some things never learned how to stop." Noah turned the radio off. The silence returned. He didn't turn it back on. Weeks passed. Technicians reported unexplained interference across the city. Short bursts of static. Voices that vanished when recorded. Signals without origin. Most people ignored it. Some people leaned closer. And a very small number of them heard something that sounded like guidance or warning. No one could tell the difference anymore, because those who are gone don't always want to be heard. And the living don't always know when to stop listening. White noise isn't a doorway, it's a test. And somewhere between silence and signal, something is still waiting to see who listens next.